Welcome to the Flightcast, a place where opinions aren't right or wrong, and where we can agree or disagree about movies, TV, and other assorted media because it's all subjective. My name is Ray. Thank you so much for joining me. We've got a whole boatload of subjectivity to talk about on this particular episode. Happy Monday in that regard. For those of you who actually are happy to see Monday show up on the calendar, I know most of us have our struggles with respect to it, especially those of us in the working class, if you will. But hey, happy Monday. You know what? Here in Michigan, we are 4 days into the spring season, and today's high was what, 37? 37 degrees. Yep. Bundled up with a full, skull cap and, puffer jacket and gloves and everything to go to work and to go to the gym later. Yep. 4 days into spring. But this is par for the course for the state of Michigan, and certainly par for the course in the Midwest, I would say. There's crazy kinds of weather patterns going on all over the place. Hopefully, wherever you are at, it is safe and not too cold. But either way, yeah, we've got a few things to talk about, subjectively speaking, with respect to tonight's episode. But before diving headfirst into what is going to be a series of rants, more than likely, this particular episode, do want to remind everyone, especially newcomers to this show, that you can find this show and all of my other shows at theflightcast.com or wherever you get your podcast. That includes Apple Podcasts, it includes YouTube with the Flightcast YouTube channel, it also includes Spotify and Pandora. You can find the Flightcast podcast in any of those places or wherever you get your podcast, whether you use a podcatcher like Overcast or anything like that. You can find this show for sure, and you can find the Flightbox show that I'm now doing episodes every Wednesday for Daredevil Born Again. We will be talking episode 5 this particular Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. That's when I watch those episodes and give my thoughts on a weekly basis on the new Daredevil series. And then Friday is Friday Flight. Now, I did my first episode of Friday Flight Topside, if you will, that non-Patreon edition last Friday, and it was just a general chat while I drank some beer. But we're going to transition that into the feedback show. Yes, if you have sent in email feedback, we're going to do it on Fridays. That's going to be the day, and we're going to call it Friday Flight, because I think that it might be a little bit more fun if I am drinking a bit of beer, testing out a new one as I read through your wonderful emails. And I do mean that. I don't say that sarcastically. I love all the feedback that I get. Thank you to everyone that sends in feedback. It is always a fun time. It is always a good discussion had by all. Lots of things to talk about. A few of you have sent in your emails already. Anyone who has not, you got until, I'd say, about noon Eastern Daylight Time. That's right, we're on stupid daylight savings. Eastern Daylight Time, noon Eastern Daylight Time this Friday to send in your emails. I will end up doing the show, recording it sometime in the mid-afternoon, early evening of that Friday, and then I will post it later that night. The feedback show, Friday Flight, is now what it is called, right? Flight Chat is not going away, it's just changing. The feedback will be done on Friday, so just giving you a heads up about that. And you can find all those shows again at theflightcast.com. And also want to take a moment to thank all of the most gracious and loyal supporters of patreon.com/theflightcast. Hopefully you have been enjoying all the bonus content. There has been some new episodes of it. Just the other day, I posted a Patreon exclusive episode of Flight Review because I watched the first 4 Hellraiser movies, right? The 3 that were theatrically released. Hellraiser Quartet of Torment is what the set is officially called from Arrow Video, and it's the first time I ever watched those, and I have some thoughts. Oh boy, do I have some thoughts. If you are so interested in hearing my thoughts on that, you can go overhead to patreon.com/theflightcast and sign up to be a flight officer and go ahead and listen to my thoughts on that particular series of movies and what I think about the Hellraiser series in general. Did I regret my blind buy purchase of those 4 movies or not? And what is really a nice looking set, if you haven't seen that, from Arrow Video, available at Barnes & Noble and other retailers as well. So there's that episode, brand new. Tomorrow there most certainly will be a brand new episode of Flight Speed, because tomorrow is the 9th anniversary of the release of an infamous and forever remembered film, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. The fact that 9 years later, this film still can't stay out of the heads of so many bloggers, critics, and fanboys. It lives rent-free in their souls till the day they leave this earth, and I love that, and I'm going to be celebrating that tomorrow on the 9th anniversary. And if you know the significance of March 25th, 2016, then you know exactly what film I am talking about, especially if you were a longtime listener of this show. So stay tuned for that episode of Flight Speed tomorrow on patreon.com/theflightcast as well. And I will also let you know that my next Flight Review Patreon exclusive episode will be on a Christopher Nolan film. I have seen the vast bulk of Christopher Nolan's movies, but there are two, count them, two in particular feature-length films from Christopher Nolan that I have not watched yet. One of them I will watch and I will review this upcoming weekend at patreon.com/theflightcast. So stay tuned for that. There's only two possible choices with respect to which ones I've seen. And if you've heard me talk about Nolan's movies over the last number of years, you know which ones I've already seen. No, it's not Oppenheimer. I have seen Oppenheimer. No, it's not the Dark Knight trilogy. I've seen all of those. And no, it is not Memento or The Prestige. That's as far as I'm going to go without giving away exactly which film it is, but either way, two films from Christopher Nolan that I have not watched yet. I will review both of them, but I'm going to review one of them first because I have one of them in Steelbook form and the other in Criterion Collection form. Oh, there's another hint. Because which one of Christopher Nolan's movies is in Criterion Collection form? I'm sure most of you listening to this show know that. But you may not know the other one that is in Steelbook form because damn near all of his movies are in Steelbook form. I'm looking at all the ones that I own, and there are a couple that I do not own, but these ones in particular I do. And I'm going to review one of them for Flight Review at patreon.com/theflightcast this upcoming weekend. So stay tuned for that. Hope everybody is enjoying all the bonus content. Thank you so much, all of you loyal supporters and subscribers to patreon.com/theflightcast. I greatly appreciate it. Cannot thank you enough for your loyalty and your very generous support. All right, let's get into it. Tonight I'm going to talk/rant about two subjects that just continue to rear their ugly heads with respect to fandoms and whatnot. The first is box office, and the other is Scooper Madness. Stay tuned for the Scooper Madness rant, because I'm starting with box office, because this Snow White discussion has piqued my interest. Now, full disclosure, I have no interest in seeing Snow White. I don't. Because my thoughts on the Disney live-action remakes are friendly. I am not against them. Because you know me, I am not against reboots and remakes. I do not, approach them with pitchforks and go, hey, be gone, go away, we didn't ask for you. No, I don't do that shit. Okay, all the people that want to complain and whine about reboots and remakes that no one is forcing you to watch, that's your business. It's all subjective. You can go ahead and complain and waste energy on that all you like. I have just decided, no, I'm not really interested in this one. And there's a particular reason that I'm not interested in this particular live-action Disney remake, which I think goes into the bigger reason as to why it has performed the way that it has so far. But just to give you an update, because this is apparently a big deal, in its opening weekend, that this movie, the budget of this movie reportedly, the Snow White live-action reboot with Rachel Zegler in the title role of Snow White, and then you've got Gal Gadot as the Evil Queen. I really don't know anybody else in the cast. Those are really the two most important people to know with respect to all of this. Now, this movie did win the weekend. It did win its opening weekend as far as the box office is concerned, but apparently Disney expected way more. The budget for this film is reportedly $250 million. Okay. And after 3 days of release, 42.2 million domestic, 43.9 million international, for a grand total of 86.1 million for its opening weekend. That is, as one would consider it, lackluster for a $250 million film. And that's how it was reported on the news where I work and nationally speaking. And that's how Variety and Hollywood Reporter and Deadline are reporting all these. Yeah, it won the weekend, but woefully underperformed in that regard. And so you get on the internet. And of course, I'm back on Threads now, right? And man, I tell you what, as far as the discourse is concerned, I mentioned how, I talked in the first public episode of Friday Flight last Friday. I talked about why I went back to Threads and Instagram, and also why I've been traversing Reddit. And the discourse with respect to film threads and movies, TV, and other sorted media, yeah, it's just as active as it was when I was first on Threads and Instagram, if you will. And it really hasn't taken much to get involved in discussions and to get feedback on stuff. Like today, man, somebody earlier today on Threads posted another, there's two debates that have been going on for the last 9 years about Captain America Civil War. Whether or not you're Team Tony or Team Steve, which I don't see how you could possibly be Team Tony in either the movies or the comic book especially, unless you really like pseudo-fascism or flat-out fascism in the comic book, or whether or not it should be called Captain America Civil War or Avengers Civil War. And that's what somebody posted earlier today, and I just had to quote it, and that started a discussion, and there were people that were respectfully responding to me, and there were people that were disrespectfully responding to me. Those people are blocked, and their comments had been hidden from everyone because I love that feature on Threads. At any rate, I digress. In the midst of all of this discussion on social media, apparently there is this controversy surrounding Snow White, and I've been completely oblivious to this. I've not paid any attention to it because, again, really not interested in seeing this film. I will explain why, because it really has to do with, again, what I think is the ultimate culprit with respect to the earnings for Snow White within its first opening weekend. But I pull up this Yahoo Entertainment article. This is written by Deshita Maheshwari. The Rachel Zegler Snow White controversy explained. She posted this today, actually, because I needed a primer. I need to know, okay, what the hell is going on with respect to this? And it says Rachel Zegler's role in Disney's Snow White has been surrounded by controversy since her casting was first announced. From casting decisions to Zegler's portrayal of the iconic character, this project has sparked strong reactions. With the film's release, its controversies have once again taken center stage. Okay, well, what is it? Well, it says that Disney's live-action Snow White remake has been at the center of controversy since its announcement, with its lead star Rachel Zegler facing backlash for multiple reasons. The film, which finally premiered on March 21st after multiple delays, stars Zegler as Snow White and Gal Gadot as the evil queen. And while the initial criticism started from the decision to cast a Latina actress as the fair-skinned prince, the situation escalated when Zegler criticized the 1937 animated film in an interview. Okay, time out. So let's just begin here. The controversy started because you cast a brown female instead of an all-white female as Snow White. Okay. All right, so we're beginning with bigotry. Okay, I get it. All right, fine. Nerd MAGA took center stage on this. Now I get it. Now I understand that bullshit-ass Geeks and Gamers post from Zaki Hassan that I saw earlier on Threads. Okay, I get it. All right. So we're starting there. Then off to a fantastic start for these stupid-ass controversies. Okay. But it says, speaking at Disney's D23 Expo in 2022, Zegler called the original movie outdated, particularly its portrayal of romance. She stated, quote, "The original cartoon came out in 1937 and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with the guy who literally stalks her. Weird, end quote. She emphasized that the remake would take a different approach, focusing on Snow White as a leader rather than someone waiting to be rescued. Many longtime fans of the original film took offense. This also includes David Hale Hand, son of one of the original movie's supervising directors. As criticism grew, the article says, Zegler attempted to clarify her remarks, arguing that her words had been, quote, taken out of context. In an interview with Variety, the actress said, quote, "It can be very upsetting when things get taken out of context or jokes don't land," end quote, adding that the love story is still an integral part of the story. However, the controversy started once again when she made a political statement following the 2024 U.S. election. Okay, here we go. She posted on Instagram, quote, "May Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace," end quote. This statement fueled further backlash with calls to boycott Snow White and demands for Disney to cut ties with her. The actress later apologized for her comments. Why? She was just speaking her mind as a logically and, rationally intelligent individual. Whatever. You know what? It is what it is. It says, beyond Rachel Zegler's controversy, Snow White has faced multiple other issues. These include backlash over Gal Gadot's pro-Israel stance and Zegler's vocal support for Palestine. The decision to bring in non-dwarf actors except one to voice the dwarfs also sparked criticism. And that's the end of the article explaining the Rachel Zegler controversy around Snow White. That's it? Really? That's all it is. Just nerd MAGA fueled bullshit. Okay. All right. Well, here, let's just go ahead and set a torch to this ridiculousness right now. First of all, with respect to her comments about Snow White being outdated as far as like the prince stalking her, well, it was made in 1937, people. So maybe she has a little bit of a point with respect to that, but beyond that, okay, so longtime fans of Snow White were offended because everything offends us so badly these days. Well, guess what? Those fans, as I've talked before about fans in general of franchises, they might not even be 5%. of the general audience, as far as people who really, really love Snow White as a concept. Because seriously, how many Snow White fans do you really know? Maybe you like it. Maybe all of a sudden now you like it because you found a reason to be outraged. You're like, no, I'm going to defend it tooth and nail. But did you really like it? Was it really a cartoon that you grew up with? Was it something that you just couldn't go without watching, right? When I ask people for years what their favorite Disney movies are, no one ever tells me Snow White. I get 4 answers. In no particular order: Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and The Lion King. Those are the 4 answers I commonly get. Every once in a while, I will get an outside-the-box answer, like a Pixar film, because sometimes I ask the question excluding Pixar, right? Because otherwise people just say Toy Story this, Toy Story that, Incredibles, or Finding Nemo, or whatever, right? They'll say that. But either way, I don't hear anybody say Snow White. I've never heard anyone. I've asked like 100 people this particular question. No one has ever told me Snow White. I've heard The Sword and the Stone before I've heard Snow White, right? People who love, I know people that appreciate the animated story about Excalibur than they do Snow White. I've heard Bedknobs and Broomsticks. I've heard Mary Poppins, which is my personal favorite. No one has ever told me that Snow White was their favorite Disney film. I'm sure it is to somebody out there in this land of 8.5 billion people on planet Earth, but not enough to translate into major box office results. And that's kind of my point here, right? But before I get into that, let me just go ahead and lay further waste to this ridiculous-ass controversy. Rachel Zegler speaking her mind about how outdated Snow White is and how they've changed stuff for the new thing. Okay, so what, 1 to 2% of humanity is offended. Okay, fine. Not enough to affect the box office with any type of aplomb in that regard. And the Trump shit? Oh, no, absolutely not. Because how many of those people were going to go see Snow White in the first place? How many of those people are fans of Disney and Hollywood in the first place? No, you're never going to convince me that her comments about Trump and Trump supporters on Instagram made that big of a dent. And you're also not going to convince me that Gal Gadot being, Israeli made that big of a dent either. Nope. Absolutely not, because the majority of the general audience doesn't even know what she is, let alone Israeli. They know that she's attractive in their eyes, subjectively speaking, and they know that she's in Fast and Furious, and they know that she's Wonder Woman. That's it. It's all the general audience largely knows about Gal Gadot. They don't know about her politics. They couldn't care less about her politics if they did know in that regard, because that's how most of the general audience thinks. They do not think about these things as thickly as fans do in that regard. So, you know what? Zegler apologized. Her PR people probably told her to do it. Fine, whatever. It is what it is in that regard. But the idea that Nerd MAGA and the conservatives are what firebombed Snow White, bullshit. 1,000% bullshit. Every time they claim victory, and they have, that the geeks and gamers assholes, that Ethan Van Sciver and all those absolute moron wastes of life, like those people, taking a victory lap around this, saying, oh, we did it, boys. No, you didn't do shit. There are millions, I posted this on Threads as well, there are millions of actual MAGA that don't even know you morons exist. So, you taking a victory lap like you did anything to affect Snow White's box office? You didn't. Absolutely nothing. You are a blip, if anything, on the radar. You don't even show up on the radar, piss ants. Absolutely not. And the non-dwarf thing, you know what? That's a dog whistle. That's a red herring. You decided to get all up in arms about that the same reason that people who hated the Acolyte decided to get up in arms about Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday. You were looking for a reason to rationalize your bigotry and your hatred, because you didn't like the fact that a brown woman was playing Snow White, you didn't like the fact that she spoke out against your presidential candidate, and you really didn't like the fact that she was supporting Palestine in her political beliefs and whatnot. You hated all that. And this, again, people, is where the politics and the socioeconomic stuff of the real world intersects with our world. I just read this to you in the article. These are part of the controversies, and I'm here to tell you they absolutely meant diddly shit to Snow White's box office. They didn't mean anything. I'll tell you why Snow White had an underperforming opening weekend. It's the same reason that I'm not interested in seeing it. It's because, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, no one has ever told me that Snow White was their favorite Disney movie. And on top of that, how many different versions of Snow White have they made? Here, let's go to the tape and let's look at the chart, rather. According to the Wikipedia entry, which I guess take with a grain of salt, but they've got pages linking here, there are 25 different films based on Snow White that have been released in the last century. There's a 1902 film, a 1916 film, a 1933 film, a 1961 film, a 1987 film, and then the 2025 film. Those are the ones that are actually titled Snow White. Before all of that, there was a film called Seven Dwarfs to the Rescue, which I guess was also released in 1965. It's an Italian fantasy comedy directed by Paolo W. Tamburello, so maybe that's in the middle of all this, right? There's a 1955 West German adaptation called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There's Snow White and the Three Stooges, which I've never seen. There's Snow White, A Deadly Summer, 2012 American horror film. Snow White, A Tale of Terror, 1997 American dark fantasy. Snow White, The Fairest of Them All, 2001 adventure television film, co-written and directed by Caroline Thompson, produced by Hallmark Entertainment. Oh yes, of course, Hallmark Entertainment. Is that Kristen Kreuk in that movie? I have to look this up really quickly. Is that Kristen Kreuk from Smallville in this film? Miranda Richardson, and yes, Kristen Kreuk. Yes, Lana Lang from Smallville once played Snow White, back at the turn of the 21st century, right? And then there's Sydney White, an American teen romantic comedy film based on the fairy tale of Snow White by the Brothers Grimm, starring Amanda Bynes. Okay, and again, this is all based off of the Brothers Grimm Snow White movie, right? That's just those. The last one that I saw was Snow White and the Huntsman, and the sequel, The Huntsman Winter's War. Remember, with Kristen Stewart and Chris Hemsworth and Charlize Theron? Remember that, right? There's Grimm Snow White, which 2012 American Fate. So a lot of these even came out in the same year. 25 different versions of Snow White. Were any of them like major hits? Right? Do we talk about the Snow White franchise in the same vein as like, you know, Transformers or Fast and Furious or any of the comic book franchises? No, we do not. And there are 25 internationally released films, globally released films across the planet. There's even a Rugrats Tales from the Crib Snow White, an animated American like version in this regard from Nickelodeon, right? Klasky Supo. Remember that animation? So my point is that Snow White has never been this massive moneymaker. It's never been like this big, huge thing. I don't care how many people claim that they are longtime fans of Snow White. They are few and far between. This is a non sequitur. And when I go down the list of live-action Disney remakes, okay, because I've seen this sentiment a lot on social media. I've seen this sentiment a lot on the internet. Why are they giving us another live-action Disney remake when that's not what we want? Hey, listen, you all have been seeing those live-action Disney remakes. Maybe not you, but how about the general audience in that regard? Because if I go down that list, and if I talk about just the ones that have come out in the last 10, 15 years, here, let's go to some of the more recent ones here. Let's go to one that I didn't care for, The Lion King. Remember the Lion King live-action animation remake, $260 million budget, and how much money did it make? $1.6 billion. That's right, it outgrossed the original animated film. I don't like the movie. I don't care for it. I've talked about why I don't care for it, because all the anthropomorphization and the emotion is taken out of the animals when you see them emote in that regard. You don't see them emote at all. It's like National Geographic. It's stupid. I don't care for it. It outgrossed the original, which I personally hold and revere high in my heart. How about Aladdin, which came out, only a couple of months before that? May 24th was the release date for Aladdin 2019. July 19th was the release date for The Lion King. But Aladdin, remember the one with Will Smith as a genie? Remember how people complained about that? That was a $183 million budget. How much did it make worldwide? $1 billion. That's right. Aladdin made $1 billion. Okay? We can go even further back here. Okay? How about Beauty and the Beast? Remember that one? Isn't that the one with what's her name? Why am I blank? Emma Watson. Thank you. Emma Watson and Dan Stevens and Luke Evans. That live action Beauty and the Beast came out in March of 2017. $160 million budget, $1.2 billion at the box office. Do you see where I'm going with this, guys? And mind you, those three movies I just named, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and Lion King, all three of those movies are movies that when I ask people over the years what their favorite Disney movies are, they're part of the four. The fourth one that I haven't named yet, The Little Mermaid live action remake with Halle Bailey, $240.2 million budget, $569.6 million worldwide. So not nearly as much, but still made over $500 million in that regard, right? And even Mufasa the Lion King, a prequel made off of that live action animation Lion King reboot, is $626.6 million at the box office on a $200 million budget. So the point is, that's why these movies are being made, because Disney is making money off of them. But the problem, as I've mentioned already a couple of times, is that Snow White isn't that popular. It's not. Snow White is not that popular. Not among our generations, not among younger generations. And at the end of the day, whether diehard Snow White fans want to listen to this, I don't really care because it's all subjective and they can disagree with me all they want. It's old. That actually you can't disagree with. It is old. 1937, as Rachel Zegler put it. If it's that old, then how do you expect younger generations to be that connected to it? I grew up with The Lion King, and anybody that is in my generation that has kids now grew up with Lion King, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, and Beauty and the Beast, right? I've seen all four of those movies. Let's see, how many of those I see? I saw Aladdin in the theater, and I saw The Lion King in the theater. I did not see Beauty and the Beast in the theater because I'm not really that big of a fan of that movie personally. And I didn't see Little Mermaid in the theater, but somebody had the VHS, and we totally watched that, right? I've seen all four of those films. I still, to this day, have never seen the original animated Snow White. So this idea that Snow White was going to be this massive moneymaker and this idea that, oh, it's all the controversy that, no, people just don't give a shit about Snow White. The general audience has proven they don't care that much about it. They don't hold it in the same regard as any of the other four movies I talked about, and probably not even some of the other Dark Horse films that people have told me. I mean, people think of Alice in Wonderland before they think of Snow White, don't they? Right? Seriously. I mean, there was Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. 101 Dalmatians, right? That live action version in 1996, 75 million budget, 320.6 million worldwide. Okay, they even made a sequel, 102 Dalmatians. All of that happened, right? The closest we got to a Snow White adaptation after all these was before now was Maleficent, right? And that was just her retelling of the movie. Now that did well because it didn't focus on Snow White. Interesting. So I wonder what that says. You take a character, Maleficent, from Snow White, and you focus the movie on her instead of focusing on Snow White. What does that tell you? That the audience doesn't really give a shit about Snow White. I'm sorry, Snow White fans. I don't mean to be rude. But all three of you on this planet, like, that's it. Like, there's no one else. And the general audience is clearly not going out there to see the damn movie. It's just how it goes. Sometimes that's how it works. Disney thought they could roll the dice, and they'd been doing so well with these live action remakes because they have. They legitimately have been doing well with these live action remakes, and they thought they could do well with it again, and no. So far, not so great. Now, it's only been 3 days, so we'll see what the legs on this movie are, but right now it's not trending all that well. And while people want to break all this down and talk about, well, it was this and well, it was that, it's as simple as the general audience doesn't give a shit about Snow White. Sometimes the simplest answer is the correct one in that regard, and I'm pretty confident in saying that that is the case. As I've been talking about lately, when it comes to these movies, it's all about marketing and hype, and if you just can't build up that much hype for Snow White, then it's not going to sell, right? It's got to be something that the general audience is legitimately interested in. The general audience, not you, not fans of Disney, not fans of Snow White. Again, all three of you on this planet. It's just not that big of a deal. It isn't. It isn't. And I think the proof is in the pudding so far in that opening weekend, and the proof is going to continue to bear out. Again, am I interested in seeing it? No, and I am a Disney fan. As I've mentioned, the four movies, one more time, the four movies I ask everybody, what is their favorite Disney movie? I've seen all of those. And outside of these, I haven't even watched all these live action remakes. The Lion King was the only one that I watched. I didn't care for it. At some point, I'll give Aladdin a shot. I've been told the Aladdin one is actually pretty good and that I should give it a shot. Clearly the general audience loved it. It made over $1 billion, right? Just over $1 billion in that regard, right? But that's my point here, guys. Is just in the midst of all this noise and in the midst of Nerd MAGA trying to claim victory, no, they didn't have shit to do with it. General audience just doesn't give a shit about Snow White. Plain and simple, bottom line. And I see nothing that is going to change my perspective or opinion on that. All right, rant on that over. Now let's talk a little bit about Scooper Madness, because apparently there's death, taxes, and people still giving Scooper Madness attention that it does not deserve. And this isn't just on social media as far as threads and BLUESKY and everything is concerned. This is also happening on Reddit. In fact, my story here kind of starts on Reddit because seriously, these Reddit subs at the end of the day are like run by softies. Seriously, because I mean they have their rules, but when somebody posts some ridiculousness and it's like, you know what, dude, I really don't think you should be paying attention to this. It's your own fault if you get duped into this. Like, I mean, what do you want me to say, right? Somebody finds a rumor, right? And this in particular happened on Superhero News. I got banned from Superhero News, right? The Superhero News sub I got banned from because apparently I broke their rules. Well, what did I do? Did I call somebody son? Did I curse at anybody? No, this is what happened. This newish Scooper Madness rag that I just discovered called comicsbasics.com posted this story that somebody shared to the Superhero News Reddit about how apparently the Warner Brothers Spain site made a few changes with respect to their listing, their official listing of the Batman Part 2. Apparently, it's now officially, according to their site, not the American site, not anywhere else. According to their site, it's called The Batman Part 2. And they changed the genre. They updated it to science fiction fantasy. And this was enough for people on the subreddit to think that, oh, they're turning into a musical like Joker Folie I Do. And I'm like, really? Okay. This is how fragile people are. And this is how ridiculous fans can be. We know how ridiculous fans can be, but I just have to point this out. So, Warner Brothers Spain decided that it was going to call the movie The Batman Part 2 because that's apparently a big deal. And the genre is now listed as science fiction fantasy. And because of that, this article is claiming that the Scooper Madness rag is claiming that, well, it's clearly going to introduce some more fantastical elements and it could be closer to Joker Folie I Do. Like that's, and you got people that are freaking out. And I saw this in the comment section and I was just like, okay, can I just throw a bucket of cold water on everybody and just tell them to seriously chill and relax? And I tried that. I said, it's BS. Count on it. It wasn't on the main page. It was on the WB Spain page, and all they did was change the title and change the genre. And if that's enough for you to freak out or even remotely express anything other than dismissiveness, then you go ahead and be dense all you like. It's clickbait designed to get people like you to react to nothing. So have fun with that, I guess. Don't say you weren't warned about it being a waste of your time. This is to somebody that was trying to defend what I was saying, or trying to attack what I was saying about it being clickbait. We have a right to express some concern. Okay, this isn't some concern. You guys are panicking. You guys are flat out like, I can't believe they would ruin it. That's how much they were pressing the panic button on a clickbait story about nothing, about Warner Brothers Spain changing some shit on their website. Scooper Madness wound them up, and I tried to bring them into the light. This person wasn't having any of it, and whatever, and apparently that's why I got banned, because that was actually, you know, and there were other people that the first post on this said, has anyone on this thread actually read the article? This is a complete non-story. So there's even people elsewhere in this thread that agree with me. It's bullshit. It's ridiculous. But because I dared say, don't waste your time on this, it's your own fault if you fall for it, I got permanently banned from Superhero News because my comment violated the community's rules. Well, screw you. I don't need your sub if you're going to be that charm and soft about it. Especially when it comes to Scooper Madness winding your people up. If you guys want to be wound up on stupid shit like that, that's your business. But here, I'm here to tell you, I don't know who this new rag is, like what this new comicsbasics.com rag is, but they posted that. They also posted, apparently, new Superman test screening details. Of leaked details include the movie's comedic tone, Crypto's role, Rick Flag Sr.'s role, and the leak also mentions that, quote, online speculation is dead wrong, whatever. Scooper Madness clickbait. But of course, this extends beyond DC stuff because Phil, I'm going to bring you up here, Phil, a longtime listener and good mutual. What did you post earlier today? I saw you post this and I quoted it myself on Threads. This was from an account on Threads called Daily Cosmic Marvel, which has 19,500 followers. Your number one source for all things Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and Disney, which you have to be careful with these sites because they'll repost anything, whether it is actually verifiable or not. And apparently they posted, quote, Kevin Feige is reportedly concerned about the Russo brothers directing the upcoming Avengers films following The Electric State, which is their movie that just popped up on Netflix with Chris Evans and Millie Bobby Brown that apparently bombed or whatever. It did not open very well critically on Netflix. And it says he plans to closely oversee the projects, ensuring the scripts are just right and everything stays on track. The source of this is Daniel RPK. Yes. Longtime grifter and general asshole Daniel RPK. He has been grifting and conning fans for years now. And now he's trying to convince you that Kevin Feige all of a sudden doesn't trust the Russo brothers. The same Russo brothers that made him billions. Starting with Captain America the Winter Soldier, and then continuing to Captain America Civil War, otherwise known as Avengers Civil War, as far as I'm concerned, and many other people agree with me, Phil included. And of course, Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. These are the people that Kevin Feige suddenly doesn't trust with Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Because apparently, everything they've done outside of Marvel has failed. Whatever it is, the Gray Man, the Electric State, all of their non Marvel projects apparently have been critically bombed in that regard. And since Kevin Feige has been known to be an extremely irrational and knee-jerk individual, emblematic of Toby Emmerich or Walter Hamada or anybody at the previous Warner Brothers regimes, he suddenly doesn't trust his $2 billion earning directors that have literally made the MCU as big as it is, and in their biggest hour, right between Phase 2 and Phase 3, these brothers have directed the biggest movies in MCU franchise history, and now Feige doesn't trust them and is going to be watching them like a hawk, closely overseeing, ensuring everything is just right and everything stays on track. So here we are now, reaching yet another milestone with respect to the MCU and its fandom. We have reached the Scooper Madness phase, and maybe we were already there, considering some other stuff that's been said between Phase 4 and 5 with respect to the MCU. But here we have a shining example of Marvel fans in tatters, Marvel fans shaken, Marvel fans worried and scared because they're not at the king of the hill anymore, right? They're taking on some water, critically speaking. There are people now creating subs called the mid-cinematic universe and talking about how Marvel hasn't made a good banger since this and that and whatever, right? Of course, it's really since last year because Deadpool and Wolverine was last year, and just a couple of years ago was Spider-Man No Way Home, but whatever. You know what? There are people out there that are throwing dirt on the fictional grave of the MCU. And these fans are shaken by this, and they're in a vulnerable state. And of course, leave it to a grifter like Daniel RPK to just go ahead and pour that salt in there and really poke the stick and be like, here, let's get you to react. Let's get you to buy this shit. The Russos aren't trusted by Kevin Feige, and he's going to watch them like a hawk and make sure that everything's okay. How much sense does that flippin' make? Go back and again, just go back and look at the box office history of Anthony and Joe Russo in the MCU. And you tell me if Kevin Feige, if it makes any logistical sense that Kevin Feige would be monitoring them that closely. Now, maybe some of you believe that. Maybe some of you do buy, well, it's been a minute, and this is a critical time for Marvel. And then I would submit to you that if this was that critical of a time for Marvel in this regard, then he wouldn't have brought the Russos back in the first place. Okay, there is a definite air of we're putting the band back together between the RDJ casting as Doom and now you're bringing back the Russos to direct your next Avengers films. I can see the movie, or I can see the meeting rather with the bean counters and the executives at Marvel Studios and Disney now, where Iger and everybody is saying, hey, we need to get back to what made us $2 billion a film. Bring everyone back. And Feige goes, well, I can bring back RDJ and make him Doctor Doom, and then I can bring back our old directors that, made us billions with the Avengers films, and they go, okay, cool, do that. Let's get back to what we used to do and how we used to, and let's get back on the top of that mountain hill. And so there's a circling of the wagons, if you will. And you really believe that if Kevin Feige were going to bring his old directors in to do this, that all of a sudden he's not going to trust them? That he's really going to be like, well, I'm bringing you back, but I'm sorry, the Electric State, that just didn't pan out for me, and, I got to be real careful with you guys. Bullshit. 1,000%. Never, ever, 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 ever trust a single thing. This is your reminder. This is your regular reminder to never, ever, ever trust a single thing that Daniel RPK posts whatsoever. He has spread lies and BS for clicks for years. He did it with DC. Now he's doing it with Marvel. Believe absolutely nothing he says, even if he posts that water is wet. Because that's the day that water is no longer wet, if he ever posts that. There's nothing to be trusted, nothing to be gained from anything that he says. He is leading you down a manipulative path. But you're listening to this show, so you already know that. Spread this around to your constituents. Spread this around to anybody that you've made new friends with on social media. Because Scooper Madness, it was bad enough when they manipulated us during the days of the DCEU. Now they've just moved on to their next target, the MCU. And it's frustrating. It's ridiculous. Because I see people actually taking this seriously. And, I did have an actual, like a couple of fruitful conversations with respect to this on threads, because there was one individual, Dewey underscore Montana, that said, quote, I don't believe the report, given the so-called source. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Feige is overseeing the projects closely, given how this is supposed to reach the highs of Infinity War and Endgame, potentially even setting the bar even higher. Now, personally, I think Dewey underscore Montana is not necessarily level setting and is not taking into account how much things have changed since Endgame was released in 2019. And I'm not just talking about the pandemic, I'm talking about Hollywood in general. I'm talking about inflation and consumer habits in general, streaming in general. Like, there's a lot of other factors that come into play that could affect how the next Avengers movies perform in the theater compared to how, Infinity War and Endgame performed way back in the days when Marvel was printing $1 billion per film almost regardless of anything that they put out in that regard, right? Those days are over, and naturally those days were going to end, but a lot of fans are not handling that well. And Dewey underscore Montana sounds like somebody that believes they can get back to that. I do not believe they can, because I think that ship has sailed. I think the Infinity Saga ran its course, and because they've had some issues with respect to the next direction that they're taking the franchise in, they're in a bit of a holding pattern. They're in a bit of a transitional period, if you will. But the idea of expecting $1 billion to $2 billion for any of these films has always been unrealistic, and any fan to do so, that's just not a realistic position. But what I responded to Dewey underscore Montana with was what I said earlier. I think Feige still trusts the Russos, or else he wouldn't have brought them back. He doesn't need to watchdog them like he would other less experienced directors. He doesn't. He most certainly doesn't. I mean, if there are any directors that understand the MCU and also understand what was done creatively back in 2018 and 2019 that really catapulted the MCU at the tail in the middle and at the tail end of the Infinity Saga, it's the Russos. Like, why would he doubt them? Why would there be any reason to watchdog anything that they do in that regard? So, just level set your expectations and realize that Kevin Feige implicitly trusts the two men that made him billions of dollars. Okay? Like, it really doesn't need to go any further than that. I had another conversation with another individual, Sauntering Downwards One, who legitimately asked, for the uninitiated, who out there is the most reliable when it comes to secrets and scoops? I love that question because I get to say this. No one. No one but the studios themselves or the official trades. THR, Variety, and Deadline. If it doesn't come from any of them, treat it like hearsay and never fully trust it, even if it somehow becomes true later. And here's the sentence. Here is the statement that I wish every fan would burn into their brain for all time with respect to Scooper Madness. Quote, I'm quoting myself here. Scoopers are at best spoilers and at worst liars. Do you want to be spoiled on the movies? No, you don't. And do you want people to lie to you about what's in the movies? No, you don't. So consider that with respect to looking at anything from Scooper Madness. Scoopers are at best spoilers and at worst liars. If what they're telling you is true, they've spoiled it for you. And if what they're telling you is false, they're lying to you. It's a lose-lose situation. Not a no-win, a lose-lose situation. There's a difference between a no-win situation and a lose-lose situation. Lose-lose is worse. And either being spoiled on a detail that you could have been surprised in the theater with, like Red Hulk being in all the trailers and marketing for Captain America Brave New World, that's not something that you want, is it? You don't want scoopers just completely. How about the people that, were all over Scooper Madness, and the legitimate leaks that came out about Spider-Man No Way Home? Your bubble was burst a bit, wasn't it? Right? Those of you that read, and listen, people can lie to me and say, no, I was just as, yeah, okay, no, you weren't. No, you were not. You were expecting it. I knew at the very least that they were going to appear, right? That Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were going to appear in No Way Home. I did not expect that it was going to be as substantial like the entire third act of that film. That blew me away. That was amazing. That was incredible. And if I had known that beforehand, it would have ruined it for me. I still would have enjoyed the film, but seeing it coming like that would have, no. I would rather be surprised. I would rather not know. So think about that when it comes to Scooper Madness. When you want to read these leaks, when you want to read these reports, they're either spoiling something for you or they're lying to you. There is no winning in either of those situations whatsoever as a fan. There just isn't. So I leave you with that. And then there was another individual, Matthew_Files, who popped up and said, discussing film is good too. And this is where I got to talk about regurgitators, because regurgitators are also part of this. And I said, discussing film is a regurgitator like Culture Crave and others. Sometimes they source the trades or the studio, sometimes they source Scooper Madness. Just have to be careful which one it is when they post. You do. You got to consider the source. Whenever discussing film or Culture Crave or like Fandom Wire or any of those other, when they post something, you got to see where the source is. Where did they get it from? Did they get it from THR? Did they get it from Variety? Did they get it from Deadline? If the answer is yes, okay. If the answer is no, screw it. Toss it in the garbage. Treat it as though, whatever. If it came from Cosmic Book News or from Giant Freaking Robot, those nerd MAGA twits. No, and any of them, no, leave those in the corner, right? Only from THR, only from Variety, only from Deadline, or from the studio itself. Those are the sources you trust, not Scooper Madness. It's been a while since I've said that, and I know probably the majority of you listening to this show already understand that, but it's just something that I wish to reiterate and spread the news with respect to it, because, wow, we're at that point where they're attacking us from both DC and MCU. And maybe, they were already, spouting ridiculousness about the MCU back in the day and we were paying attention to it, but now it's more obvious because of the state that the MCU is in, the state of transition that they're in, and how the fans are reacting to it. Like, maybe it is just more obvious now. But either way, Scooper Madness is nothing to be trusted. And whether you are on Threads, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're on any social media platform, Facebook, there's there's so many regurgitators and ridiculous shit. And now it's like AI ridiculousness as well on Facebook, or whether you're on Reddit in one of these subs, and my number of subs is shrinking. I guess I better watch what I say in the Marvel sub or in the DC cinematic sub. Yeah, okay, whatever. It's ridiculous. I don't curse. I don't call people out their name. I've blocked some morons that have cursed at me. Have they been banned? Have they been kicked out? I don't know. I have no idea, because I just distance myself from them because I'm an indiscriminate blocker when it comes to that. If I don't feel like dealing with bullshit, I'm just going to block it and move on. But no, I guess I got to watch my tone with respect to these subs before I get kicked out of all of them. Whatever. It's so soft and it's so stupid. And I'm not there to cause trouble. I'm there to be like rational and reasonable and say, hey, you know what? Maybe this energy isn't necessary. Maybe we don't need to freak out over everything that a Scooper Madness rag tells us, because it's probably not true. And they're probably, these aren't even real articles. Like their opinions are like, well, we think this is happening, or this, it could signify this. You don't know shit. You don't have sources, right? Like, you are just throwing it out there, you're throwing it against the wall and seeing what sticks and seeing what's going to stoke the attention and energy of the fans for your own personal gain, whatever that is. So, whatever. It is what it is. I haven't ranted about Scooper Madness in a while, so yeah, I wanted to throw that out there and just talk about that and bring it to the light yet again, because it's not going anywhere, and it's going to get louder as we get closer to the new MCU films, and certainly as we get closer to Superman, we're going to hear some more shit about that. And never mind any of these set reports or any of this stuff, the stuff that I talked about before on Patreon about how, somebody from the Snyder Cut sub that I left, I think I was banned from that, but I left it, and somebody there who hates James Gunn and blames James Gunn for the destruction of the DCEU was posting this bullshit from 4chan about how, the Superman is in tatters, the test screenings have gone horrible, and Warner Brothers is in full damage control. And they're like, see, I told you James Gunn's gonna ruin everything. He's the Antichrist. Just, don't believe any of that shit, people. Seriously. Warner Brothers is not in the best position. I know there's a lot of shit going on there, but for crying out loud, just wait for the shit to actually release before you decide to pass judgment on it yourself. And screw all the other noise. Seriously. I don't care where that noise is coming from. I don't care how much dirt you want to dig up, or how much you want to be in the know before the damn movie comes out. Just find some shred of patience, will you? Could you? I know who I'm talking to. Fans are anything or nothing if not impatient. As I get older, I grow less and less impatient. And I'm just like, you know what? It'll happen when it happens. That's how I am about the Batman Part 2. Like, again, all I gotta do when I think about how long it's going to be before the Batman Part 2 releases is just look at my shelf of flippin' Batman content that I can watch at any point in time to satiate my Batman lust if necessary. I'm good. I don't think any Batman fan has any right to complain whatsoever. We've had 6 cinematic Batman actors since 1966, actually 7 since 1966, and there have been 2 cinematic interpretations of Superman since 1978, in the last 47 years. Because remember, Brandon Routh counts under Christopher Reeve. So we've had 2 interpretations between the Christopher Reeve Brandon Routh version and the Henry Cavill version. That is it for Superman. Wonder Woman fans only have Gal Gadot. Aquaman fans only have Jason Momoa, and that's over because he's about to be Lobo in the DCU. Batman fans, myself included, have nothing to complain about. So, just throwing that out there as well. While Scooper Madness tries to wind us up about everything, whether it is the Batman Part 2, whether it is Superman, or whether it is the future and the fate of the MCU and the next Avengers movies, just shut out all the noise and just find some shred of patience if you can as a fan. I realize that that is a difficult task to ask for a fan, but it'll be more peaceful for you and certainly for me and the rest of us if you just find some shred of patience somewhere in your mind for this. Anyway, I think that's going to do it for this particular episode of the Flightcast. Rant Mode Disengaged. Thank you so much for listening to my rants. Thank you so much for listening to my passion with respect to fandom and my thoughts about box office ridiculousness with Snow White and box office ridiculousness in general, and all these excuses that people try to come up for why a movie isn't performing well when it just simply doesn't connect with an audience because an audience didn't really care for it that much in the first place, and also Scooper Madness rearing its ugly head and being ridiculous as it normally has been for the last however many years. If you have any thoughts that you would like to share for Friday Flight coming up this week with respect to the box office, Snow White. If any of you have seen Snow White and you have some thoughts about it, you have some thoughts on the silliness of the controversy or whether or not you agree with me in terms of why it didn't get off to a roaring start as Disney expected, even though it was number 1 in the box office. Or if you certainly have thoughts about Scooper Madness's ridiculousness and nonsense and how they're still winding fans up. Now with respect to anything DC and Marvel in that regard. You know where to find me on BLUESKY still at Flightcast. I am back on Threads and Instagram at The Flightcast. There's also the Flightcast Facebook page. And of course, I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. And also, you can subscribe to the Flightcast YouTube page where these episodes get posted, and you can post under the comment section for that particular episode as well. I will definitely be reading those, and I will make it an effort to read those before every Friday Flight to make certain I don't miss anything there as well. And don't forget, for those of you that are on Patreon, don't miss tomorrow's episode of Flight Speed, where I talk about the 9-year anniversary of course, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Because I am choosing violence tomorrow, and it's going to be biblical and epic on my way home from work. I have no doubt about that. And for those of you not yet on patreon.com/theflightcast, don't forget, we got another episode of Flightbox coming up on Wednesday where we are talking episode 5 of Daredevil Born Again. What a fantastic show that has been so far. Let's see where episode 5 ranks with respect to our enjoyment so far of what I think is definitely one of the MCU's best shows to date. Screw what they say about the numbers not outperforming Agatha All Along. Whatever. That's bullshit. Whatever. It is what it is. I love this show. If you love the show, tune into Flightbox on Wednesday. And one more time, Friday, 12 noon Eastern Daylight Time, the deadline for Friday Flight, because that episode is going to get recorded and posted that night. If you want feedback in on this week's episode of the Feedback Circle. But until all of that, take care, stay safe out there, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.